You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. And be sure to smash that like button. All right, so earlier this week, obviously, the Maason Smith story dominated headlines. He'll be suspended for the LSU season opener against Florida State because of an autograph signing held just before NIL went live. Ross Dellenger, 2 days in a row. Delly wishes he knew how to quit us. He just can't do it. Ross Dellenger of Yahoo, just minutes ago, broke story where he got to speak. He got the first on-the-record comments from Brian Kelly about the Maason Smith saga. Delly's with us now. How are you, man?
Good, Matt.
Hey, so when did you talk to Brian?
It was early this morning. Spoke to him. I was, as it turns out, I was in Baton Rouge just literally for a few hours earlier this week, and couldn't get the schedules right, and so to get some time with him, so we decided to connect on the phone, and so it was this morning, and we talked for a few minutes about Jane Daniels and Florida State, but also obviously about this issue with Maason Smith.
So you were in Baton Rouge, huh?
I was for about 12 hours. I
mean, that's enough time to go have a whiskey somewhere. Plenty of time for that. Tell you what. What did Brian Kelly? So what was the most, interesting or newsworthy piece of what Brian Kelly told you about the Maason Smith thing?
I think the part that I found the most interesting was that LSU, exhausted all options, which normally would include appeals, which it did. It had at least two appeals denied. But the most interesting thing, I think, was that it actually tried to schedule a week 0 game so that basically Maason Smith presumably would serve a suspension during that week 0 game against, I guess, you would move up a game from this season. The one that makes the most sense, obviously, is Grambling week 2. You'd move that up to week 0. So they explore that possibility of scheduling some kind of game in week 0 and having Maason Smith serve suspension for that game, and then obviously would be eligible, because it's a 1-game suspension, would be eligible for Florida State. So that was interesting, and it was very Brian Kelly, because I don't know that a lot of coaches would have acknowledged that, but that is actually a great thing about Brian Kelly is he's pretty blunt and honest, and he kind of just says it, right? And it's actually pretty refreshing.
It's candor from a football coach it's refreshing. It's amazing. His program isn't falling apart with telling the truth about things. So they tried to move the game. That's something I know we had talked about here that wasn't able to work. Did he fill in any of the blanks, the particulars about the appeals process in particular? Because that's one of the things, Ross, that I know a lot of people here have said is, why couldn't LSU just pick what game that Maason Smith would serve? Like, why couldn't they just let him serve it the week 2 against Grambling?
Yeah, so he did address that. And it doesn't work that way, unfortunately, for LSU fans. The NCAA is a pretty stringent rule when it comes to player suspensions. In general cases like this one, once a suspension is ruled to be final, then a player must miss the immediate very next game for which he or she is eligible and medically cleared. That is important, right? Because this ruling obviously came down last year, and presumably came down in the fall last season, when Maason Smith was injured and was not medically cleared, right? So he couldn't serve a suspension last season. And LSU they made at least 2 appeals, potentially even more. One of the appeals was to choose the game. Given the circumstances of the injury, given the circumstances of the NIL stuff, can we choose the game? And no, that was denied, as well as an appeal that I think just like a normal appeal where the basis was the NIL case situation, right? That about a month before NIL and autograph signings became legal, this happened. And the NCAA basically told the LSU there's no grandfathered in clause. Like, when the autograph signing happened, it was at that time against the rules, and so there is punishment.
I guess it's worth noting also that Brian Kelly wasn't the head coach of LSU at that time. So to ask any question about what the policies were around LSU or education for players, I would assume be fruitless to ask him that type of question.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it was 6 months or so, I guess, before he became the coach at LSU, and digging around on this with some folks, it's very odd. The timing of this is all odd, Matt. And Brian Kelly didn't know the details of it because, again, he wasn't here. So I didn't think, or he wasn't there at LSU, so I don't think he would know the details. But this suspension and this improper benefit must have came about, after the 2021 season, right? It must have came about after the 2021 season, or you would think those players would have had to miss a game in the 2021 season. So it was weird because if this happened in, say, I think it happened around late May or so in 2021, then, your suspension comes in 2022, in this case in 2023, but if he had been medically cleared, he probably would have sit out last year. But it's still over a year, right? For a year and a half for an impermissible benefit over an autograph signing. So that just tells me, I guess, with the appeals and everything, this was pushed, I guess. But also it tells me that maybe it wasn't reported real quickly, right? That's what I'm getting at, I guess, it must have been reported at a much later date than what happened.
Well, ultimately, and again, Ross Dellenger, I spoke to Brian Kelly on the record today about the Maason Smith situation. Go to Yahoo Sports. You can read Ross's piece there. He's on Twitter at Ross Dellenger as well. Spent a couple of minutes with us here. You said that you also talked to Brian Kelly about Jaden Daniels and Florida State and all that good stuff. Anything else of note that BK had to say?
Not really. I thought it was interesting. I asked him for any fond memories of playing in Florida State because, at Notre Dame they play about, I think, 5 games a year against the ACC. They have an ACC schedule that makes up about 50% of their overall schedule. And so he's played FSU quite a bit, and I asked him for any fond memories. He mentioned the 2013 game against Florida State where Notre Dame had taken Florida State to the wire, and that's the year, of course, Florida State eventually won the national championship. And Notre Dame took the Noles all the way down to the wire and maybe would have won the game if not for a pick play, a offensive pass interference call. So we talked about that a little bit. Thought that was pretty interesting. But he's got kind of a long history against the Noles with his time over there in the ACC.
This will be his 3rd consecutive season, opening with Florida State. 2021 is last year at Notre Dame. They opened with Florida State. That game that Notre Dame was winning big, they allowed Florida State to rally. Notre Dame won it in overtime, 41-38. So it's been a couple of nail biters the last 2 years. See, we're in store for a week from Sunday. All right, Delly, we appreciate it, man. Football season's upon us. Looking forward to catching up down the road, man. Thank you.
All right, Matt. Yep, thanks.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.